Engels in Manchester. Most of us, we read all the books and all the writings that Engels wrote, or he wrote with Karl Marx, but sometimes it's hard to sort of forget, well, what about when he was actually here in Manchester? He was here twice, from 1842 when he came in September for about 20 months, and during that time he gathered a lot of information that he then went on to write up in his book, The Conditions of the Working Class in England. But I want you to imagine him coming to Manchester as Camilla said, radicalized by, revolutionary politics in what becomes Germany, and he comes to Manchester. And if you can do the next slide, and he got off the train here, and this is London Road Station, which is now Piccadilly Station. You can see the approach there, and the building at the back was there when Engels left Manchester. So he got the train home, if you like, or back down rather to London from here in 1870. But when he arrived in 1842 at the London Road Station and he got off the train, there was two big things that hit him. The noise from 5:30 in the morning, you had like 10,000 spindles from the steam-powered engines in the mills, but also the smell from the burning of the coal, the fossil fuels that drove the steam engines in the factories and in the mills. And he did get, when he got off the train, he got a cab. You can see them there lined up, and it went up to where he was staying at first, which is on 70 Great Ducey Street near Strangeways area. And he was there in lodgings from there. And it's from there that he walked around, and he spent a huge amount of time walking the streets of Manchester. If you go to the next slide. Now, he came to Manchester because his father wanted him to keep an eye on the family business, and he went to work as an apprentice in the Ermine and Engels factory, which was located in Eccles. But the other reason his father sent him to Manchester is he wanted to get him out of trouble, because he was mixing with the wrong sort of people, and he was a bit frightened. He thought, we'll pack him off to Manchester, he'll get away from those militant ideas and those militant circles that he was working in and circulating in. Now, this is a book on Chartism by Eddie and Ruth Frau, Communist Party historians. Their whole archive now is the Working Class Movement Library. But I've been intrigued by this drawing on the front cover, and what it depicts is the town hall. But we're not talking about in Albert Square. This is the town hall, now called the Old Town Hall, that was before the town hall in Albert Square, and it was on Cross Street, King Street. It was quite a large town hall. And if you look at the diagram, I'll tell you what's going on there, and this is depicting a scene from the middle of the 1842 general strike that happened in Manchester in August. And you've got on the very back, magistrates stood up reading the Riot Act. You've got lines of armed soldiers who were shipped over from Ireland and from Liverpool to try and quell the strikes and the protests, and there's a whole line of soldiers, and in front of them are Chartists, and they are rallying. Now, it wasn't an out-of-the-way place, Manchester, that was quiet. It was an absolute hotbed of rebellion. Previously had a massive general strike. There were 10,000 members in Manchester alone who were Chartists. And so he comes to a very radical town with a very advanced working class movement. Okay, if we can go to the next one. So I showed the Chartists in Manchester rallying in front of the town hall, and now I've got a picture. You may notice this is Cathedral Gardens, and that's the football museum in the background, and then the Arndale Centre. And the reason is that this fountain in Cathedral Gardens is right above the river, the third river. There's the Medlock, the Irwell, and the Irk, and the River Irk is underneath that fountain. If you go to the next slide, because you can't see the River Irk today because it's covered over. But if you look at that, it's an old map, and the red star in the middle is where the fountains are, and underneath is the River Irk, and that River Irk goes across to the right, and it is which is right to the north, and you can see it meets the bridge there. And that bridge over the river is the Ducie Bridge. And if you read the conditions of the working class in England, there's quite a lot of description of the Ducie Bridge that comes from Engels. And I've always wondered, well, where is this Ducie Bridge? And it can't be seen, but that's where it is. And there was a Ducie Arms, a pub, Ducie Bridge pub rather, that was nearby. That's long demolished. And I do really urge people to read or reread the conditions of the working class in England. There's one scene he describes where he stood on the bridge looking down. 20, 30, 40 feet below is what is supposed to be a river, but the smell and the stench from the river comes up, and it, you know, makes him choke in his nostrils. And all along that riverbank and the other rivers was working class housing. I don't think you could quite call it housing because of the absolute disgusting nature of it. If you go to the next slide, it tells you about Little Island, which was the area along the River Medlock going down to the university, and that plaque is still there, and the cellars that he talked about are still there, although they've been modernized. If you go to the next slide, and this is a pub called the Salisbury Pub. If ever you walk down from the university into town down the Oxford Road, you go underneath the motorway, and then you get to where there's the entrance to the Oxford Road station. And you think, well, why is it that you have to go down to get to this pub and the station steps and then up? It's like, this is like 30 feet below the level of the Oxford Road, which is higher. And the reason is that this was the entrance to Little Island. To get to Little Island, you went down because the housing was by the sides of the river, and this is the only part that is left. So Engels wrote about the conditions of the working class, but he didn't only say, and they were a suffering class, they were also a fighting class, and that's the whole lessons that he learned and the interactions he had with the fighting workers, if you like, the Chartists. And if you go to the next slide, and this is a drawing of a building called the Hall of Science. It's near the Castlefield Museum. It no longer exists. When Engels came to Manchester in 1843, this was 2 years old. It was a new building. It was built by subscription. It was by the followers of Robert Owen, early English socialist, although he was a factory owner as well. Look at how many books there are, like from bottom to top, you know, and that's someone addressing the crowd. It's in this very building that the Chartists held the Manchester Delegates Conference in the middle of the general strike. And it was actually while they were holding this convention, this conference, armed soldiers were outside banging on the door trying to shut it down. When Engels comes to Manchester, he goes to the Hall of Science very, very often, and he absolutely loves it, the vibrancy of the workers that he met there. And I'm just going to read one little bit that he said about the Hall of Science. He said, "At first, one cannot get over one's surprise on hearing in the Hall of Science the most ordinary workers speaking with a clear understanding of political, religious, social affairs. But when one comes across the remarkable potpourri of pamphlets and hears the lectures of the socialists, one ceases to be surprised. Furthermore, there are also Sunday lectures, which are very diligently attended. Thus, during my stay in Manchester, I saw the Hall of Science, which holds about 3,000 people, crowded every Sunday." And there's more to describe what happened in the Hall of Science. And this is where Engels met the leading Chartists. And also, it seems most likely, according to the Fraus, and I think that they're right on this, he met the woman Mary Burns, a young woman who was an Irish woman who then forms a relationship with a personal relationship. They become lovers. They live together for the rest of her life, but also very much involved in politics because she was Irish and brought republicanism, if you like, to Engels. They went on holiday or went on a tour of Ireland. And on that tour, Engels remarked, "Ireland was the first colony of England." Can you go to the next one?
Sorry, Mark, you've just got a minute left.
Yeah. This is the scientific development there was at the that was one of many in Britain, Stephenson's rocket. If you go to the next slide. And this is inside the Royal Exchange, now a theatre, the Stock Exchange, or sorry, the Cotton Exchange. And you can see in the roof there, final day's trade-in, the prices of the trade-in that was going on, and that is still there. Engels actually had to work here when he did his long working, as he says, for the board to keep Engels' family finance, so that Engels could write his book. And if we can just go to the very last slide. And this is inside the Chatham's Library. This is the desk that Marx and Engels actually sat at. And you can go in there when it's open and you can actually sit there. When Marx left, when Engels left Manchester in 1870, he writes to Marx from this desk saying how he looks back with fondness of the time that they spent together sitting here at this desk. They did economic research and read a lot of the books and pamphlets and records that are in the library, on which they then based much of the economic and political writings that they go on to do. But I just want to end finally with a quote from Engels. And this is a quote from Engels that he wrote about Karl Marx on the graveside of Karl Marx. And he said of Marx, and I think he could have been describing himself, because I think this is a fitting tribute to the life of Engels. He says of Marx, but also I'd say of Engels, he was before all else a revolutionist. His real mission in life was to contribute in one way or another to the overthrow of the capitalist society and the state institutions which it had brought into being, to contribute to the liberation of the modern proletariat, which he was the first to make conscious of its own position and its need, conscious of the conditions of its own emancipation. And I think self-emancipation and revolutionary politics was what Engels was about. He came and he arrived as a revolutionary, but his time in Manchester, he left after learning so much and teaching us so much.